got to have that autonomy. I've got to be able to look and say, I'll do this. You know, if somebody tells me that you can't do it, you can't cure it, I'm like, yeah, watch this.
Tom, how did you find carnivore?
Well, with health things, you know, I'd looked around lots of different things, different. I've tried so much stuff, and I found carnivore via Michaela Peterson, um, and talking about the lion diet and what have you. And I thought, you know, I'm trying that. I've tried so many different things. I've tried diets where it was mostly vegetables. That just got worse. Um, and then I found this and thought, you know, let's give that a go. And I tried it, and the results were pretty quick, pretty quick. I reckon after a few weeks, I started to feel very good. That would have been around a year ago. What I have done in that time is kind of come in and out of it a little bit, but I would say pretty much sticking with it. You know, it's everyone. You know, you all make. Once you start feeling better, you think, "Oh, I'll be all right. I can have a sandwich."
So what was it that made you look for a solution? What were the health things you were trying to deal with?
Well, well, 2018 sort of time, I was on a family holiday with my then partner and my little girl. Um, and I started getting a few kind of weird things with my vision. I felt like I had a blocked ear. We were away in a cottage in Whitby, and I felt like I had this blocked ear. Jodie was putting olive oil in my ear, see if that would make it better. Nothing made it better. Um, and I started getting like a double vision, two images on top of each other, and it take about a minute for the two to come back together. Um, and so, and Jodie had said, you know, get checked out. So I don't normally go to doctors, but I made the mistake of going to the doctors. They passed me from one department to another department. Doctor, it was an optician first. I went to an optician, and they see things, you know, and they, if you pardon the pun, but they then sent me. I ended up stuffed into an MRI scanner, and then in an office with a neurologist giving me a serious talk about how your MRI would suggest that you've got multiple sclerosis. At which point, because I was feeling much better, I thought, no, forget that. I'm not someone who goes to the doctors. I'm just naturally don't think along certain ways. And I thought, no, I'm feeling much better. And I walked out of there, carried on with my life. Fine, you know. But over the years, a little bit of pressure on me with work and, you know, just generally in life, like everybody gets. I don't always deal with pressure too well. And I felt like things were getting worse. You know, I could tell then that while I'd walked away from that, I knew what it was. But I stayed the line. I've tried everything really. I've walked hedgerows looking for medicines. You know, I've tried different diets, mainly vegetables. You know, um, and nothing was working. And then I came across the carnivore, and that's made all the difference. So that was my health journey. Really, is that, you know, this awful condition. However, that's 2018, and here I am in 2024, still working, still walking, still talking, still doing all the things, you know. And I haven't. And while it has at times got, you know, there have been times where I've thought I can't do this anymore. Actually, you know, things are really looking up. Things are really feeling like I've got the better of it, you know. And that's what you need. Sometimes we get these things, and it's for everyone. The thing is that we lose is hope, you know. And that's harsh to go through that. And you think, yeah, where's my hope? You see the neurologist, they'll say, you can't cure it. This is what's going to happen. This is your time frame, you know, and there's nothing you can do. That's that's such a it's such a depressing situation to be in, and depression is a part of this as well. It is a condition that can lead to that, and it is pretty bad. So it's a very, when you feel hopeless, you know, there's nothing you can do. They'll say it's in your genes. It's not in your genes. They don't know. You know, they don't know. And it's massively, all these things are massively on the rise. They don't want to look into that. I said to a doctor not long ago, I was explaining to her, well, I don't tend to go to the doctors, but I went about something, a GP. GPs are generally better. And I spoke to her about it, and I said, there are people pushing trolleys around supermarkets, and we're all loading it up. Oh, what are you doing? I'm just going food shopping. And I thought, you can call that poison, you can call it filth, but you can't. You're hard pushed to call it food, really. And so I've always like carnivore is so beautifully simple. I don't need a trolley. A hand basket will do. I walk in, I go to the meat, I get the meat. Even the vegetables that I was having before. I only really went to the meat and veg, and that was it. Whereas all those aisles and aisles, once you start looking around you, you realize what percentage of your supermarkets is just poisonous junk.
I've got a few questions, but the first question is, what have you noticed that's improved since from 2018 to now, or since you started Carnivore?
I had a list. I had a list. It's probably on my computer somewhere. I've changed computer. Maybe it's on a different hard drive. I don't know. But I had a list of all the different things when it got really bad. I made a list of all the symptoms that I had. I can honestly say, Dave, now I can't remember what's on that list. I feel like it's gone. It's gone back. It's gone. It's disappeared. It's kind of drifting away. So I don't really remember, but I would say, balance issues was a big one. In my job, I need to have balance. Doing work that I do, I need to have that. Sleep has always been a bit of a problem for me. I have issues with sleeping. That improved. Uh, the balance was a big one, and just general fatigue. Real serious fatigue. I'll say to people, oh, when people say, oh no, I get tired, and I think, yeah, I appreciate that. We do, but I kind of have to say, yeah, but it's not quite like that. It's a crushing fatigue. It's weird because MS is such a strange thing. So there's times where I'll say things like, oh, I've got something, it's like pins and needles. But I have to say it's like pins and needles because it's the one thing, it's like pins and needles, but not quite. Because you have to reach for the thing that other people will be able to compare it to, and I'd say that that's the closest thing. Tiredness, pins and needles, a numbness. I just had no energy at all. I was completely wiped out. I never, you know, at any point in the day, you wake up like it. So there were so many. I actually thought about it if I could find that list that I put together maybe 2 years ago or a year ago. And I put together this list when you were feeling really rough, all the things that you'd got. I don't really have those things. I really don't. And I don't know. I mean, the difference from carnivore, my energy levels are so much better. And hardly ever, you don't really need to eat as well. You'll know. I wake up in the morning and I've had this morning, I've had bacon. What have I had? Bacon, eggs, loads of that. Often I'll wake up and I make like burger patties, but I make them out of minced beef, ground beef, they call it in the US. And I chop up streaky bacon into it and mix that up. So they're kind of like a bacon burger. I'll eat them. By the time it gets to 5 o'clock, the only indication that I may need to eat is that my belly rumbles. I don't feel hungry, but my belly rumbles, and I think, oh yeah, 5 o'clock. Most people eat. I think I'll eat. But yeah, it's an amazing thing.
That's a really good point. Like, I noticed that yesterday. It's like you don't have that feeling of being hungry, but yeah, you can just get a bit of a rumble and it's like, come on, it's time to start thinking about something, you know? But there's no urgency like before.
No, no. I mean, when you're eating like my old diet, before any of this, when I just be able to eat what you want, I never put on weight, and I always stayed healthy and fit and everything. But even though you look like you're healthy and fit, sometimes that you're eating is doing you damage in another way. Um, but I would say when you were on that diet, you were always, oh, I think I'll just pull over, get a sandwich. I think I'll just pull over, get something to eat, because you seem to be, if you're on carbs, you're always hungry. It's got this like, I don't know, you're never satiated. With meat, just eating a carnivore diet with meat and eggs and things, you don't get this.
It's almost like the perfect business model. Produce food that, fills you up but leaves you hungry, you know? It's awesome. Almost like it's intentional.
Make it addictive as well, make it so it's an addictive thing. I'll tell you what, years and years ago, I remember the first time I ever saw a drive through Starbucks or whatever, if I can say that. And I thought that's the end of the Western civilization, when you got a drive through for warm beverages. And then I realized, now I did try to stop coffee, but I'm properly addicted. But I realize now, when I look at it, between the coffee and the sugar, they're drug dealers. It's unbelievable. That's an incredibly good business model. But then the other side, we're like chronic illness, say things for like MS, we can't cure it. Can't cure it. You just got to take these drugs. What about diet? No, it won't do anything. Won't do you any good. Won't change a thing. And that's the bit where I think, yeah, okay. I'm looking for. I was never going to go with a voice that was telling me, well, just kind of dissuading me from having any hope. You've got to take these things. It's like, no, I don't want to. I don't want to. I'm going to walk my own path. Which brings me to another thing that I'd said about it. If you're interested, that another thing that is making a huge difference for me is I discovered this earthing. So I walk my dog now. I'm lucky. I live out in the countryside, and so I walk my dog now barefoot, and I sleep on an earthing mat, and it's phenomenal. I can't say enough how much this is making a difference between just eating meat. And both of those things essentially are ancestral. We didn't have, even until like the 60s, when they were making these, petrol based plastics that they put on the bottom of your feet. We didn't have those. We were connected to the earth in some way. So it's a kind of an ancestral living. I think, yeah, maybe that's what I'm supposed to be, get away from all of this nonsense.
I'm glad you clarified that you're out in the country walking barefoot. I remember as an Australian, it's pretty normal to walk barefoot everywhere, or at least when I grew up. And I remember in '95 living in London, I went from our house to the supermarket barefoot, and the looks that I got walking barefoot in the middle of London was I shocked a few people.
It is. I walk my dog, and it always amazes me that people don't ask, why are you not wearing shoes? I'm walking around. I live near a National Trust estate, so I walk around there, and there's loads of people dog walking, but they just walk past you. You can see them nudge their wife. Oh, he's not got shoes on. It's like, just ask me. Do you know what I mean? But I think, no, it's all right. So in Australia, it's a bit different. I started doing this like when you're in North Norfolk in January. It could be a bit of a it could be a bit cold, but I've kept with it. And you think, yeah, I used to get back from a dog walk, and I just had my dog's feet to wash, before he came in the house. Now we've got 6 feet, and we're all right. So it's no real, no real problem.
How was your condition affecting your job before Carnivore? And, like, has that completely gone now?
Well, I own my own business, so I can decide. There are times where I think, no, no, I'm not going to do it, and I've got autonomy. But then when I look at it and think, well, actually what I'm doing, really what I was doing, was I just didn't feel up to it. I didn't feel good enough to work. So that gave me an autonomy, definitely, but it meant that I could look and say, yeah, actually this isn't just about being a little bit idle. This is about me not being able to do it. Now I don't have that. Now I'm out and about, I'm doing all my work, and we're doing all right. Right now it's quite nice because it's incredibly windy here, so we would have been off anyway. So I think, yeah, it's okay. But I would say it did affect my work. The balance issues. There were times where I thought, this is getting a bit dodgy. Not being able to balance very well. But that's gone. It's all lifted, Dave. It's I can't say enough. I would never tell anybody what it is. I would never advise people what it is that they should do. I think people have to follow their own path, walk their own path, whether that's in shoes or not shoes or whatever. And I think you got to find your own way. But that's the bit that I think is key, that we don't always feel like we can be our own physician. We can look and say, I see it like this, right? It's like walking on a frozen lake. If I take a step and it creaks, I'll go the other way. And that's what I'm doing. I'm kind of my own barometer. I'm looking and going, okay, this is, I'll try this for a bit. I did it all, you know, the diets, the vegetables. My fridge was full of so many vegetables. Oh, it's got to be good for you. It's like, I'm not sure. I did it and it creaked, so I walked the other way. I don't know. I mean, people think about how expensive it is. I saw somebody, I don't know who it was, on YouTube. There's a lot of channels like yourself that are really valuable, you know, to people, and I watch so much of it. And somebody said about the cost. Oh, yeah, meat's so expensive. It's like, well, look at the look at the price per pound on spinach. You know, in bags of spinach or whatever. It's like, yeah, meat's not expensive compared to that. You know, it weighs nothing. You're paying £2.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So you're now the 8th person that I've interviewed regarding multiple sclerosis. And everyone who has done a carnivore diet has just the symptoms have gone away. You know, like one gentleman, the lesion that was found on an MRI can't be found anymore.
Yeah.
Um, it's, but apparently there's no cure. You've just got to live with it, and diet's got nothing to do with it. I mean, how does that make you feel when you think about that? When it's like, it's, I mean, it's great that you've had like this, you want to call it reversal or remission of symptoms, but like so are so many other people. But this myth that it's you just got to live with it's being propagated.
I mean, a chronic illness, I think, I don't know, I'm not going to comment too much on it, but a chronic illness, it pays out pretty good from, you know, it's for life. Can't do anything about it. You got to keep taking these drugs. But it's about people choose their own path. So I've got, I don't know if I should say this, but I've got a cousin as well, on my father's side, my dad's twin's daughter. And she's got MS, but she also works for the NHS. And so she's just, while I've often said, oh, tell her about this, tell her about that, you know, tell her what I'm doing. um i don't think i I don't think other people are necessarily wanting to go down that path, you know. It's, I tell you what, right, if you look at your diet and you say you've got to change everything, change all your diet, whatever. When I first started on carnivore, wow, it's boring. Do you know what I mean? That's so boring, I tell you. But you find your way. So if people, when they've got whatever condition, when they say, oh yeah, if you change all of this, you can make a difference, right? But oh, but I've got to give up that and I've got to give up this. Can I just keep eating? Or you could have this injection, eat what you want. And they just have the injection, eat what they want, and that's it, because that's easier. And it's taking them out of that responsibility to it. I'll tell you what, about the first day that I started carnivore, right? I woke up, had some dry minced beef, something else. I wasn't really into the pattern of what I've gone to now, you know. So some of the food then was pretty rough. The first day I had this minced beef, and then I walked outside, me and my dog, and like I say, I live in the countryside. I startled a pheasant in the garden. It flew, didn't quite get above the house, and flew into the window, dropped down, and died. And I thought, if that's not a sign, so that's it. That's like manna from heaven. So yeah, that was that afternoon. I had a pheasant. You just think this has got to be, you know what I mean? There's got to be a sign on it, really. And then at times, Dave, I'm sure you've had this as well, where because I felt so much better, it's like, oh, it's okay, it's fine, I'm feeling good, I can have that thing and I can have this thing, and you let it creep back in again just a little bit. It's like, no. And I was doing kind of carnivore, but not quite, and you start to feel rough again. So now it's like I'm full on hard carnivore, and I'm not letting that go, because it can be dull. And when the world's around you, you know, and I live near the seaside, and you can always smell fish and chips. You think, oh, that'd be nice. But when you do it, you know, you feel bad again, the creaking ice, you know, as you're walking.
And, you know, knowing how you're gonna feel, it's just such a good way of maintaining that kind of, "Yeah, I know that I'd like to have it, but I know how I'm gonna feel."
Yeah, exactly. You know, there's that thing, isn't it, that Kate Moss says or something, you know, nothing tastes as good as skinny feels. And I feel like nothing tastes as good as walking feels. I often tell myself that. It's like, what do you want to do? Do you want that burger? Do you want that fish and chips, or do you want to carry on? So you've got to have, really, out of all of it, your doctors, your neurologist or whatever, they might be, for even if they're really well-meaning. I'm not going to say that they're not, but let's say an individual and he's really well-meaning and he wants, or she wants you to do well out of it, but nothing wants you to survive and to do well as much as you do, as much as your body does. And so I feel like that's it. I've got to, I'm just like that as a person as well, like with my business, everything. I've got to have that autonomy. I've got to be able to look and say, I'll do this. If somebody tells me that you can't do it, you can't cure it, I'm like, yeah, watch this. It's a bit of a trait of mine. But I think, yeah, it's an empowering thing to think you can make a difference, rather than be told by a consultant that you can't make a difference. That's a grim thing.
Yeah. Actually, just the fact you talked about business there, that makes me think, like when you're running a business, if you have success, you don't want that success to be like, "Oh, that was just a bit of luck." I hope that I'll be lucky again tomorrow, right? You wanna have control and you wanna know why you had a success so you can replicate it, right? And I guess that's the same with our bodies. We want we wanna be able to control the situation. We wanna be able to know, well, if I eat this, this is gonna happen and so on and so forth, right?
Yeah. And, a lot of the time, the medical profession, it kind of removes that sense of control. That's like, that's just the way it is. I tell you what, there's something else I've been looking at recently, and that's Bruce Lipton. And these are epigenetics. That actually, while you might have a gene that is there, that's passed down to you, if somebody says to you, "Oh, it's genetic," you've got it in your genes. Nothing you can do. That's just the way it is. It came from your parents, and that's what you've got. But the idea that, but you can kind of switch it on and off. That idea then that I can change my lifestyle and I can maybe stop that gene being expressed. Now I've got control. Now I've got, in some way, a sense that I can make a difference to my situation. It's not so hopeless. I think stress is a big thing. Stress is a big thing for all of us all the time. Um, I just felt with Carnivore as well, I felt happier. I felt more powerful, more in control. When it got really low and I thought, what else am I going to do? It felt like last roll of the dice. What am I going to do here? And I discovered this Carnivore. It's like, yeah, I'm going to do that. And I started to feel empowered. You're taking control of your life.
How long have you been doing it, now at a stretch, and, how are you eating day to day?
Well, like I said, I fell off of the wagon a bit, but so probably around a year ago, I started on the Carnivore, and great result. That was when the pheasant flew into the window. So that was and you were getting these great results. Because you're getting the great results, you let it go. And I'd say that now, these last few months, it's just been strict Carnivore, sticking with it. Eating day to day, I'll get up in the morning and I will have things like those burgers, the homemade burger things that I can make. Um, I do sometimes put mustard on them, or a tiny bit of very small amount of finely chopped raw shallot on there, and that's, but it doesn't really make a difference. I don't see, and then just adds a bit of taste. So I'll do that, and then in the evening, I'll eat about 5 o'clock. So I'll eat a big breakfast, lots of these burgers, belly never rumbles. I'll tell you what, I've had. Um, when you first up, you had another guy on your channel talking about MS. His name was Tom also, and interesting. And he was saying that when he's out, and he does a similar thing, a manual job. And he says when he's on the van, when he was on carbs, he'd be like, "Oh yeah," he was going to his lunchbox at like 10 in the morning or whatever, and eating that after eating a big breakfast full of carbs. And that is something that happens. I completely related to that when I heard it. When I first started on Carnivore, I thought, how can you go through the day and you're not eating? I'm going to just get hungry. So I ended up taking a little can of as fork and a can of mackerel fillets in brine, so they were water based. those mackerel fillets are still in my bag. I haven't ever needed to open them, you know? They've just stayed in there. I think they're still in date, but I just don't see that I'll ever eat them anyway. So I've never needed, you think, oh no, I'm going to be, because of your old way of being, your old way of thinking, your experience was with the carbs, you were eating your lunch at 11 o'clock, 10 o'clock, you know, and you got your bread rolls, your crisps, all of that, you know, junk, really. Now that's how I view it. You know, I'm not interested in any of that. But I would say again, yeah, you just don't get hungry. So I've carried a can of mackerel around with me for years.
That's awesome. So before we move on, I have to ask you, what does pheasant taste like?
Pheasant. Uh, it's a bit dry, really. It's not very good. It's not.
Ah,
I think you know, I don't know the whole business with pheasants around here and stuff. You got all the landowners, and it's just about posh people shooting things. So, that's what I think it is. You know, I'm not knocking them for it, but it's just, you know, so the actual food that they get out of it is not that great. But weirdly, what I would also say that that's on point as well. When I first started with this carnivore, you know, a year ago, that I felt like, God, this is dull, this is boring. There must be something else. And I'd have steak, and I'd have steak. I always thought I loved ribeye steak. You can never get bored of ribeye steak. You can if that's all you eat. Um, so then I'd look and go, oh no, I've got to have something a bit different. So I'd get chicken wings and you know, get them in the air fryer. And weirdly, when I got chicken or I got pork, belly pork or anything like that, belly pork's okay. But whenever I got anything like that, I just felt like it wasn't really filling you up. Like chicken, definitely. I just never really felt satiated. Lamb's okay, but mainly I just eat beef. And just recently as well, Dave, I've started getting into. I've been going to a couple of really nice butchers, and so I'm getting good fresh meat. And I've been making steak tartare. You know, so I've been eating the beef raw, and the egg yolk raw. And once I ate it, the first time I thought, oh, this could be potentially a bit disgusting. It's brilliant. I love it. So that's become my go-to dinner now. Is like steak tartare, which is just, you know, chopped up steak, egg yolk on. You make it into like a mound. You've probably seen it, and then put the egg yolk on. Beautiful. Yeah.
wow. And so I've spoken to other people that prefer to eat like this too. And I often hear from people that like you just like you feel better after you've eaten it raw like this. Is that your experience?
Yeah. 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 So my experience was I made this. I thought I don't know. I'm going to try and make that, and so I made this thing. You know, make it a bit different because it's just the same thing all the time. Steak, and I'm not knocking it. Steak's beautiful. And it's only when you start that you think, oh, this is dull. But you actually, in the end, you're kind of like, no, that's it. You're eating for a different thing now. You know, we're basically like, I used to really like cooking, and you'd have all these different things. And you think, yeah, every day really is just like restaurant food, you know, and you're just eating like that all the time. Whereas now it's become, yeah, it's food for fuel. When I started on the steak tartare, I just needed to do something a bit different. And once I took a bit, I thought, I don't know what it's going to be like eating raw meat. One mouthful, you think this is perfect. This is what I want. You know, it's weird. Again, it's listening to your body, isn't it? You know, it's listening to your body, and you should be able to. While you know the doctors, your body is most got the drive to cure you or treat you. It's your own body, you know. And when you're tasting the food, it's the same thing. Your body knows that's good. We need that. You know, we really need that. And so I found that with eating this raw beef. I don't know. I think I'll carry on. I think I've eaten it quite a bit recently, and I've not had any issues. It's just lovely.
I've got to try it at some stage.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you'll be surprised. I think it's lovely. They do say on some of them they'll just chop in a little bit of gherkin, finely chopped gherkin, again a little tiny bit of shallot, and half a teaspoon of Dijon mustard or something. Just mix it all up, and then it's just a raw egg yolk on top. But I was thinking, yeah, try it. I mean, you could do it without the gherkin, without the other stuff, and just eat the beef raw. Yeah, it's all right. It's okay. Sounds disgusting, but it's okay.
It's quite common to eat that in Japan.
Is it
I
right?
can't remember the name for it, but yeah, it's quite common to eat it. So it's easy enough to go into a restaurant to get it too.
Yeah. I mean, it's so simple. Carnivore is so simple. That's the other thing. The actual cooking, the process of it is so simple. And now I've just got to a point where it's like I don't even need to turn the air fryer on. Do you know what I mean? Just put it on a plate. Fine.
So on that point, um, because it's so simple and you're not thinking about food all the time throughout the day, and, the preparation time is so quick, um, has that changed anything about your day-to-day routine over the last year?
Yeah. I'd say thinking back, when it first started on Carnivore, I kind of missed cooking because I used to like cooking, and so I used to like that process, and I did miss that. But now I don't. I just look and go, okay, everything is quick, it's easy. I know what I'm doing. I just go in, fry a steak. I don't really. We forget things quite quick. As people, we can forget things quite quick. So in a way, all of that process of cooking's, yeah, that's okay. This is what I cook. I just fry the steak, or I just chop the steak and put an egg yolk on it. So it's all become, yeah. That's my. It's not the same thing. It's just so simple. And the first thing you notice is you've cooked your dinner, and it's like there's no washing up. There's nothing to wash up. It's just that there's a plate. There's you know what I mean. There isn't all the pans, all this sort of stuff. It's just simple living. And I think it is an ancestral thing. I really believe this, that there is a way that we should live. There's a way that we were supposed to live, that we will thrive in if we're living in some way like that. We can't fully go back to that way of being, but we can at least be conscious of it and to try and do things differently to put ourselves in the best position with it.
I know you said earlier that you don't like doctors and so forth, but have you been back to the doctor or the neurologist or anything in the last year and kind of said, "Hey, it's all fixed"?
No. So maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago or something, they said, because it's here, it's the NHS, and they said, "Oh yeah, we're gonna, we're gonna put you in for another MRI." And the doctor, GP, because I was speaking to her and I was feeling really bad. Things had gone. I think it might have been 2.5, something like that, 2.5 years ago, and things were really rough. And she said, "Oh, we're going to put you in. I'm going to put it through as an emergency. Don't panic. It's just what we have to do. Otherwise, you'll wait for years." I waited for about a year, and there was nothing happening. If that's an emergency, do you know what I mean? So I just thought, no, I don't need that. So I ended up going to another doctor who was really receptive about it. A bloke, like I said, GPs can be a whole different thing than the consultants. And he said to me, "Look, you're on this waiting list or whatever to get an MRI. If you're doing really well, should I just put a line through it? Shall we just forget about it?" And I said, yeah. He'd seen all my medical records, everything. I've got them all printed out. He'd seen what they'd said. And I just said, yeah, just put a line through it. So I don't really want to go. I don't see what the benefit is for me. I don't know. I don't really necessarily believe that things like MRIs are actually that good for you. It's like when you get an X-ray, the dentist walks out of the room, don't they, and hide behind a wall, because if they're exposed to that all the time. So I don't necessarily think that these MRIs are, and I can't be sure that they're not without some sort of a health implication. And what's the point? Even if they said to me, "Oh yeah, you've got this, and you're going, and it's going to be really bad, and it's got so much worse," it's like, well, I feel like I've got better. Why? Well, what, do these drugs? It's like, no, it's still a no. It's still a no from me. I'm just going to do my own way. I'm going to live my life. I'm going to be, walk my path and see what difference I can make to myself. And if like I said, I don't want to influence anybody else. If they get diagnosed with this terrible condition, I don't want to influence anybody else saying, "Oh, you should do this." The only thing I would say is, this is what I'm doing, and that's it. This is what I'm doing, and it seems to be working pretty good. I mean, I work at height, in my job, and it's a hard job. It's a physically demanding job, and I'm doing really well. I'm doing really well, and I'm not young anyway. It's like, if so to just looking at my age to be doing what I'm doing, you know, my old man, he saw me throwing a ladder on my shoulder and walking around, and he says, "You know what? I think I want MS." Look at him. Do you know what I mean? And you think, yeah, so I'm doing all right, and that's the only thing that I can do. And like, the frozen lake is, I've just got to read my own body and say what is working for me. What's working for me. If that's working, I'm going to carry on. I don't want to influence anybody else, and to say, not to say what they should do. But I think just be aware of things. Be aware of stuff. I don't think necessarily. Sometimes maybe allopathic medicine is, for all its well-meaning, it, in the background of all of it is profit. And that's the one thing that I would say, is that there's just profit. There's no profit in curing you. There's no profit in that. With chronic illness, there's no profit. What is that saying? There's no money in broccoli. And I think so. Whether I'd say broccoli or not, but I'd say, it's it's all about the money, and the profit that comes out of it.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it has definitely gone much more down that road, maybe in the last 20, 30 years. But I remember when I was a kid, like, it didn't seem to be that way. Maybe it was, and I just didn't notice. But like, they seemed actually more concerned about finding out what was wrong than just, well, here's a prescription.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's always just, they're just treating symptoms, aren't they? I'm not medical, so I can't really, comment on it. But everybody, you hear the same things, that they're just treating the symptoms. So you've got this. All right, you've got this problem. I tell you what, I remember years and years ago, somebody saying to me that they'd been to the doctors and they'd said, "Oh, you need to stop drinking." Oh yeah, he just had a few drinks or whatever. Stop drinking, for blood pressure. So he stops drinking, goes back. Oh, his liver count's up. But why is my liver count up? I've stopped drinking. And they were like, oh yeah, but that's because of the stuff that we've given you there. And they'd give him drugs. And it's like, all it is, essentially, what I said to that guy then was, it's the old woman who swallowed a fly, that then you swallow the spider to catch the fly, the bird to catch the spider, and eventually you end up eat a horse and die. That's the old children's rhyme, and that's what it is. I feel like there was an old lady who swallowed a fly. There's never an end to it. They just keep, oh, you've got this symptom, here's another pill. You got this symptom, here's another pill. And it's so much easier to take a pill every day, to take a pill, than it is to change things in your life, like your diet or your exercise or whatever. I remember working years ago, when I was working in a job. There was one of the ladies that worked there, an older lady, and she had like this box, and it had all these little sections, and they all had different pills in. And she was kind of like, oh, I have to take 2 of these a day, 3 of these a day. And she had this big old long list. She must have rattled at the end of it, after taking them all. She had this big old box full of these pills. And in some way, some people, and I'm not criticizing anyone, but some people get something out of it. I never wanted to be a sick person. I still now refuse to be a sick person. I just don't. And I've got all appreciation for those people that do battle through things, and they do go through all this, and they struggle with it. But for me myself, it's like, I just got to change that. I've got to walk my own way. Some people, it's like a crutch to lean on, to be, oh, I've got my box of pills. Maybe they're doing nothing for you.
Yeah, good point. Yeah, I've seen I've seen people with those kind of boxes, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday kind of thing, and yeah, it's yeah. I hope to never be in that situation myself either. Um, so do you think that we, we just talked about it's easier to take a pill than to kind of change things around, right? Do you think that that's kind of a modern thing where we're just looking for an on-off switch for stuff? Do you think it's kind of people are not educated enough about how nutrition could help them? Good nutrition could help them, or do you think it's a bit of both?
I think it's probably a bit of both, really.
Mm.
But are aware of what it's like. Say with this condition, you go and say to a neurologist, what can I do with diet? He'll say, well, there's nothing's going to change it. um, so there's that aspect, that element to it, that we are not really given that information. I don't have a television. I haven't done for years and years. So I tend to look things up. I read a bit, and I'll look things in. But a lot of people don't. It's just we want a lot of the time we want what is easy, what is given to us, and we'll believe it. And we'll go with that. That's what they've told me. That's how it's going to be. It's like, so I think that's an aspect of it. It's a part of human nature, really, that we want that easier way. We still want to be able to eat the chocolate. We still want to be able to eat the burgers. But so here's your pill: eat your burgers, eat your chocolate. That sounds in some way better than just, yep, just meat, endless meat. you know.
Yeah, no more chocolate, no more burgers. That's not quite as appealing, is it?
No. So that's the difficult bit. It's the difficult bit. Even if you said, I think a lot of times, if you said to people, if you just did this, you'll be fine, you'll be cured. I think a lot of the times they won't, if they have to give up certain things. I really believe in this. I believe in carnivore. And that's another thing you need. You need belief, in whatever. I'm not, particularly, I'm not a religious person, but I think just having belief in what you're doing, in yourself, and finding that yourself and saying, no, you've got to believe that this is working. This, I'll take my shoes off and walk barefoot. I'll eat just meat. And I can say it for me. Yeah, I have to say it's working. It is working. I'm going to dig out that list, and find out what was on that list, because it's not there anymore. I'll tell you what I do get. I do get dry eyes. That's never really kind of gone away. Right, certain times of the day, I get quite dry eyes. That's it. Pretty good.
It's awesome. So, Tom, is there any way that people can reach out to you? Do you have any social media, websites, anything like that?
Um, I have a website, but it's unrelated to stuff. I think by email. I think if we did, I don't mind, kind of sharing my email, and then if people, I'll tell you, I made contact with Rebecca, who you had on your show a while ago, and I made contact with Rebecca, and we often email to each other. She's in Spain and stuff, and we just talk to each other like that. I'm happy to do that. I've found that for me was had some value to it, to be able to reach out to people. It can be such an isolating thing. Again, like I said, it's hard for other people to understand what it's like unless you're in it. I did look for a while at these. Oh, there's an MS group down the road, and I thought, I don't think I can deal with that. To see people in a situation, I feel awful for them. And if I saw people in that, I think that would, my own nature is, it would kind of um, it would negatively impact me, that I had to look and go, that's your future. It's like, no, I've got to have the hope. While I am fully supportive and caring for those people who are struggling with this, I just have to look and say, no, I'm in a, yeah, it's something to be said for, just following your own path and staying out of these things. But yeah, happily,
Yeah.
email if they want to send me if they want to get in contact with me, that'd be good.
Thank you very much. So I'll put that in the show notes. And Tom, I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your journey with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you for having me on. And I think hopefully it's going to be all right. You might have to edit it a bit, but but I would say I'd like to thank you as well, because channels, or your channel and other channels like yours, have made a massive difference. And it's a really valued contribution that you make to people's health and well-being, really. So yeah, thank you, Dave.